go. Welcome everybody to Gridiron Astrology. This is week 9 of the 2025 football season, NFL season, and we're excited today because we are going to present to you the astrological charts for Kansas City, for the Buffalo Bills, for the Kansas City Buffalo Bills game that's coming up this weekend, which is going to be played in New York at 4:25 Eastern Time. And this is a really intriguing game. The reason why is because the Chiefs seem to be moving back into their indestructible roll over everyone they play motion, a machine, a freight train, and they're playing a very, very good Buffalo Bills team. I'm here with Gemini Jess, spicy Gemini Jess, who is the co-host, and it's Dorje Kirsten, part of astrology, and we're here to give this presentation to you as we do pretty much every week. We've missed a couple weeks, but we're back. And Jess, I just have to ask you right off the bat, we see this like powerhouse game almost every season now. So what is it about these two teams that you see that helps to create like this almost dynastic success? Is it just the two quarterbacks, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, are that good, or is there more to it? What do you see going on with these two teams?
I certainly think that the quarterbacks are out of this world, especially Mahomes. I think he is the quarterback of a generation, so to speak. At least that's the legacy he's been building to this point. But what I really appreciate from the Chiefs chart is they have an exalted moon, and so that also speaks to dynasty building. Of course, that has not historically always been the case, but I think sort of the stars have aligned, both with a stellar coach, an incredible quarterback, a very strong team to facilitate that framing that is available. Now, with regards to the Bills, I don't know. I haven't spent too much time with their chart to get a sense of what could be supporting how successful they are. They do have domicile Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, so there is a lot of enduring, but it is also forming a very close sextile with a domicile Scorpio Mars. And so they are enduring, they're willing to put in the work, they're willing to do what needs to be done season after season, decade after decade, and that makes the payoff even, that much more sweet in terms of how they've been performing more recently. Those are the two factors that I see as outstanding. Is there anything that is important to you?
Well, if you don't mind, let's pull up the charts. We can take a
Yeah,
look at them one by one, and
certainly.
just kind of go over it because I'm a little bit surprised that the Chiefs are this strong. It looked like they were kind of wavering at the beginning of the season. Certainly, I was like, wow, maybe this is not going to be their season. And here they go. So, one of the big questions that I have for this show is, are the Chiefs going to get derailed this weekend? Are they going to be seen as an emperor with no clothes? Or are they going to really prove that they are the most dominant team in the NFL yet once again?
Yeah.
So this is the game chart. This okay. We're looking at the Chiefs versus the Bills.
Would it be helpful to
Um,
start with the game chart by itself?
yeah, let's do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
let's do
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
So I'm going to go here. So this is the game chart. I do have whole sign as well. I don't have the decans and the terms for that one, but
I will say this looks like a whole sign chart, just for
oh, just
anybody
kidding.
paying
You were
attention,
right.
which is fantastic. I am so natively
Good.
comfortable with whole sign. Thank you very much for throwing that up first.
Even better. I don't know if I
Yeah.
have the Placidus chart, so we're just going to work with the whole sign chart. I do know that the point that was outstanding for me as somebody who primarily works with the Placidus chart is this Mars was in the seventh house for the Placidus house system. And
Mm,
now the away team, in this case, the Chiefs, would be associated with whatever is ruling Aries, which is Mars in the sign of Scorpio, dignified planetary placement, again in the seventh house Placidus. But the descendant here, which is the home team, the Bills, that's associated with Venus in the sign of Libra. Now, what is interesting in this space is not last week, but the week prior to that, I was watching some games just casually, seeing how things were unfolding, doing what I call my practice runs. And what I noticed was there is a very similar chart. So the ascendant was again in the sign of Aries, ruled by Mars in the sign of Scorpio. It was in the eighth house, Placidus and whole sign. But Venus was upon, well, there was a conjunction that was not separating with Venus and the descendant, and it was almost exact. And
mm,
in that game, the home team, which would be associated with this Venus, won. despite the fact that we know, Mars is strongly associated with war and sports and performance and
Right. Yep.
performances of vitality, right? So I thought that was really interesting because these are both very dignified planetary signatures. And so, with that in mind, just superficially looking at the two teams, they're both in pretty good shape, don't you think?
They are, and it's interesting because I might be more prone to think that this is going to go towards the Bills if it's a Placidus chart. One reason
Yes.
is because the descendant is applying to Venus, its ruler, whereas the ascendant then kicks the moon, which the moon in the house, first house, would give the challenger a tremendous amount of strength by Bonatti's methodologies,
Okay.
either luminary being in the house of this of the challenger or the defender is going to give that a lot of strength. But that moon is way far away from the ascendant by whole sign. I don't think Chiron applying to the ascendant or Chiron and the ascendant being conjunct, which they are in this chart, is necessarily a good thing. I mean, Chiron is like you kind of get hit in the ankle. So, oh, I don't know. I'm like, is someone ankle gonna get hurt? Are we gonna get that old ankle injury, which seems to come up like maybe every other game you watch in the NFL?
Yeah.
Maybe that will be a factor. I love how strong that the Venus is. I love that the descendant is moving in and towards that Venus.
Mhm.
The eighth house Mars, I think it was the first or the second game where we had a very strong malefic, but it was in the eighth house. Oh no, it was Jupiter was in the eighth house in the first or the second game. And the team that was signified by Jupiter in the eighth house, even though Jupiter gives a lot more strength than an inner planet, and it was Jupiter. Anytime you have Jupiter as one of the chart rulers, you're going to have Mercury ruling the other team
Yeah.
because Jupiter signs are always opposed to Mercury signs, which is a really interesting comment on intellect versus faith. That's something for people to
Mm.
meditate on if they want to get deep into astrology. But Jupiter in the eighth house did not give out, even though Jupiter is an exaltation the way it should. And so I'm going to say Mars in rulership in the eighth is less likely to support or help the Chiefs than it would if that Mars was in rulership in almost any other sign than the 12th.
Yeah.
So then it's, that's the accidental debility there that Mars is going to get for being in the eighth house. And to me, that's like another pointer to like some kind of things aren't going to quite go right. Also, we have what Mercury is moving, it's within 2 degrees of its station, opposing Uranus. So then I think that usually if Mercury is past Uranus by 2 degrees, I'm not going to expect a lot of turnovers.
Okay.
But Mercury isn't really past Uranus. It's actually in application to Uranus. And for that reason, that looks to me like there is turnovers are going to be a factor in this game.
Yeah.
And maybe that causes it to be a more low scoring game
Okay.
with the MC in Capricorn ruling the midheaven. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I think that that is all pretty spot on. What I was kind of delineating was this Mars is applying to its opposition. And
Too,
so
yep.
for me, that's like some type of upset, like something is going awry for the Chiefs. And the way that I'm immediately delineating that is they may have the upper hand and then they lose it at the half, second half of the game. They're just not performing quite as well. But it could be the flip side as well, because as we know, Uranus just likes to bring in the surprises and the shakeups. And so it may be that they are down initially, and then as the game progresses, the Chiefs get the upper hand and they don't let it go. I do agree that it is not as strong in the eighth house. And this is, again, this is something that I have at least observed in just the games I have delineated in real time rather than doing any real predictive work. And I do think that where Frawley is concerned, Venus this close to the descendant is a marker of support for the home team as well. So we are getting sort of this multi-point support for the Bills, with the caveat, at least in my opinion, that both teams are pretty well supported. The other factor that is kind of significant to me, and this is me just playing with different concepts, both of the benefics are beneath the horizon, and I
Mm,
associate beneath the horizon with the home team, and then the away
yep.
team would be above the horizon. The sun would be sinking beneath the horizon during this game. But I see that as like a +1. Like it's not the deciding factor by any stretch of the imagination, but it's something. And I see that again as another nod toward the Bills.
I'm with you on that. And everybody listening, I want you to be aware that Jess is being very humble when she's like, oh, but I don't know. It's kind of a deciding factor. She whispered into my ear, and I heard it very loudly, that she is hitting like near 75 to 80% on her game calls
I
this
want
year.
to be at 80% so bad.
And that is just fantastic. Like that
Thank
is an
you.
absolutely incredible number. So when she says anything, like pay attention, because she is teaching. She's bringing the receipts. She is teaching here. So you guys have to pay
Thank you.
attention to what she's saying, and it's absolutely right. I like that she said +1, because I'd say like, okay, +1. We've got Venus in Libra, plus in the seventh, representing the +2. We've got both the benefics underneath the horizon, representing the home team. Plus three would be that the ruler of the 10th, representing the away team, is in the 12th. So then
Yeah.
that's like the not showing up. There
Yeah.
is something not showing up. These teams are actually super evenly matched. If you like look at the ranks between Mahomes and Josh Allen, then one has a 103 passer rating, 103.1. That's Mahomes, and Josh Allen has a 103.6 passer rating. They're ninth and 10th best passers in the league. They are just right neck and neck. A
Mhm.
completion percentage for Mahomes, 67%. Completion percentage for Josh Allen, 68%. Passing
Okay.
yards per game, 262. Mahomes is going a little bit further than Allen, who's 222. But I believe that is because the Bills have a better running back situation this year. They can rely on that more. They are both throwing, both four interceptions each. So they're both throwing, not too many interceptions. The Chiefs have 280 rushing yards per game average. The Bills have 261 rushing yards per game average. And I think that the Bills just have a slightly better defense so far overall in this season. And I think the Chiefs have not been playing really solid defenses so
Yeah.
far this season. And they're about to run into a real defense. So we're going to see if they can hold up underneath that pressure. Now, you have the chart of the Chiefs, the
I
Kansas
do.
City Chiefs, where you can show that.
Yeah. We also have the tri-wheel chart if you would prefer that. Or would
Sure,
you?
let's look at that. Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the tri-wheel chart with the innermost wheel being the innermost wheel is the Buffaloes, the middle Buffalo Bills, the middle wheel is the Chiefs, and the outermost wheel is this game. Is that correct? I should have switched it around, but it is what it is. That is correct. The outermost wheel is the game. Imagine this isn't here. We're actually just going to go up to the ones that are separating because it's easier.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
I like the
But
stars.
the huge
I like
star
how you
in the
present.
tri-wheel.
Yeah. Yeah.
The inner wheel here again is the Chiefs. The outer wheel is the game itself. There wasn't anything that was like hugely outstanding to me with regards
Mm.
to the Chiefs being impacted, but Mercury is opposing their sun pretty closely, and we also have Uranus conjoining
Oh
the sun
boy. Yep. Yeah.
simultaneously. So that for me is not great. Mars is also applying obviously to the opposition with the
Yep.
sun. I mean, it's a hard aspect with Mars, so not something supportive, but Mars is also making a contact with their overall essence. And that's
Now,
kind of what we
because that
do.
Mars is out of sign, I'm sorry, because that Mars is out of sign, would you
Yeah,
say that that might be some off-field something affecting the game?
perhaps. Do you mean like trouble in the coaching spaces?
I no idea. I'm just like looking at that
Oh,
Mars and Scorpio being out of sign, yet still opposing the sun.
yeah.
And to me, that's like, well, something that's not seen. Because I think
Ooh.
of out of sign aspects as being unseen influences that are still affecting.
I love that. That's great. I've never really conceptualized it like that, but I very much appreciate it because I do think it's a distinctive energy. If there's the orb of aspect, that matters, but these planets in these signs don't necessarily have a one-to-one relationship as we would expect in true oppositions, for example. Yeah, that would make sense to me. I wonder if anything that's going on ongoing with what player is currently dealing with like a lot of, is it Rice for the
Oh,
Chiefs?
right. Oh, yeah, yeah, yep. Yeah, what
I
what
don't
what
know.
is Rice dealing with? Yeah, so he has been suspended. Rashid Marcron Rice has been suspended Why was he for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy from an involvement in a multi-car crash last March? Yeah. Okay, well, that would represent Mars in Scorpio and Mercury. Mars and Mercury conjunct in Scorpio Sagittarius. That absolutely speaks towards a car crash, I think.
Yeah.
Like whenever you have Mars Mercury conjunctions, you see car crashes going way up in the world. Like I'm driving around and there's like ambulances driving by and like you'll pass a car. It's archetypal. It's bizarre. It's very strange being an astrologer, Jess, as you know, because you're just like
Yes.
driving around and you're like, oh, there's this aspect that's in the sky right now, manifesting right next to me as I'm driving past it. And Mars Mercury is definitely one of those things.
Yeah, yeah, that is very, very well articulated and like, yeah, 100% part of the circumstance here. And I mean, we are about to enter a Mercury retrograde window where Mercury will move through the early degrees of Sagittarius and the later degrees of Scorpio. But this conversation isn't done, meaning the Mercury Mars conjunction, right? I might not be exact, but drive safe is what I'm suggesting. Be thoughtful when we are on the roads. That is
Absolutely. Yeah.
especially true right
Yeah.
now.
So
Um,
Rasheem Rice did come back and play last week versus the
oh,
Raiders.
really?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago versus the Raiders. So
Okay.
he is back on the team, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some lingering shadow going on within the locker room about conduct, about morality, about some kind of off-scene thing. And I don't know. I mean, I think you and me are both a little bit like, oh, when are the Chiefs going to collapse? But that Uranus on their sun to me speaks that this is a season where we could see both the best and the worst of the Chiefs.
Truly.
And we did see the worst of them for the first three games. And then we've seen the best of them for the next five games. They are
Yeah.
now 5-3. And so they've won the last five games, which is why everybody's on them. And this might be a turning game where we see the worst again. It's
Yeah.
possible because that
Absolutely.
Uranus on the sun, and it's been there for a long time. It's going to be there for the whole season, basically.
Mhm.
Is this type of back and forth? It's not a very steady, clear winner, but it's a lot of energy when they do win, and then a lot of collapse when they don't, which is what the first three games look like.
Yeah. I agree. And we, as you know, this is not going to be the last pass. They have one more once Uranus stations direct
Yep.
after its last little bit in the sign of Taurus. And so there will be a little bit of influence, in my opinion, on their moon as well. It will not be an exact conjoining moment, but that's part of the conversation. So there's like this mass reshuffling, it feels like. But with Uranus, I think we've spoken about this before. I find that Uranus tends to bring out goodness, even if it is through
Mhm.
mayhem and madness. So, yeah, we'll definitely see, especially with their upswing performance here. Another factor that stood out to me was the transiting moon is conjoining the Jupiter. You know that historically I like to see like what is the North and South node doing, but that's not going to matter on a week-to-week basis or any of the outer planets necessarily. But the moon is very sensitive when we're looking at event charts, games, things of that nature. It usually sets the tone for what's in focus. And so the conjunction, the applying conjunction with Jupiter, I see as like a point of support for the Chiefs. What do you think?
7 degrees is a huge orb.
Fair.
I mean, if I remember right, there are some traditional astrologers who will give the moon up to a 9 degree orb because it moves so swiftly. But I think it's more common to give it 6 degrees. It's just outside of that 6 degrees. It's moving 1 degree every 2 hours, every 2.5 hours, actually. Does it hit 6 degrees during the game? It just touches it at the very end.
Okay.
That could be that it's a close game, a tie game until the very end, and then the Chiefs win at the very last moment. That could be that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I think it's a little far at the start of the game to
Yeah.
be passing over some help. Then also I'm really kind of like wondering, well, what's Mars doing at this point? Mars is in the 28th degree. It is almost anaretic.
Yeah.
I think they're coming to the end of a 5 game run.
Yeah.
But let's look at if you don't mind, let's look at the
Yes.
Bills. Because,
Absolutely.
So the game chart, we were like, well, it's the Bills. The Chiefs chart, we're like, well, okay, here they could win. Here's the reason why, the moon
Yeah.
applying to the sun. What about, oh boy, this has more stars. That's lucky for the Bills. That's
There are
bad.
many stars here. What I thought was most outstanding, again, the inner wheel is the Bills, the outer wheel here is the game itself. Transiting Sun, I mean, a lot of these are separating conjunctions, except for a super wide sign-based conjunction, which is not really how I do things. But the Sun is having a conversation, generally speaking, with the Bills, Sun, Mars, Neptune, and of course, the transiting Mars is conjoining Mercury, though it is separating. We also see Mercury conjoining Jupiter. And so for me, this is like enough activation where it's like, oh, they have momentum, they have speed behind them. And it's also kind of like they're in their element. That's kind of how this is feeling for me, at least. What do you think?
Hi, Jess, the economy is crashing unless you are someone who owns an AI company right
Yep.
now, which I don't own an AI company. So I might just mortgage my house and put them on the bills seeing that. That is it. That is like what I saw. I forget which game it was, but it was like, oh, that is the
That's it.
aspect that Mercury conjunct Jupiter. That is incredible. Mercury conjuncting Jupiter, ruling the ninth house. Absolutely. Mars ruling the 11th house of good fortune is conjuncting Mercury, while Mercury is conjuncting Jupiter. Those are so two very positive houses being aspected
Yeah.
there. I mean, Jupiter is ruling the ninth, and then, oh, look at that. The Bills are 8-degree ascendant Capricorn rising. No wonder I like them so much. That's fantastic. Moon aspecting the natal nodes. That is so much more powerful than being 7 degrees away from Jupiter, in my opinion,
Yeah.
in terms of like, well, this is a karmic fated moment. So I'm just really like, oh my gosh, to me, this is like the
This is
final
it.
testimony for the Bills. I am not going to mortgage my house. I wouldn't be so silly over that. We were in Washington, D.C at a Nationals game,
Yeah.
my whole family, and the Nats were playing. I forget which team it was. It was the St. Louis Cardinals. The Nats were playing
Okay.
the St. Louis. This was a few years ago, and we're up there in the stands, and I'm in Washington D.C. I'm with my kids, and they're there, and we're all joking around, and the Nationals are behind by like 7 or 8 or 9 points.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
turn around to my three sons and I'm like, oh, this is terrible that they're losing. I just took out the mortgage payment and put it on the Nationals because I was so sure that they're gonna win. And like I'm like a little bit mentally not there completely. And there's two old guys who are behind me who are and they start staring at me like I'm a really bad person. And my oldest son starts crying because he's believing me,
Yeah.
and I totally didn't do it.
Of course
I'm
not.
ruled by Mercury. So I like do these little trickster things
Trickster.
occasionally just for
Trickster.
fun. Yeah. And so my one son is crying. These two guys are like looking evilly at me. I didn't put any money on the game whatsoever.
Yeah.
But then the Nationals come from behind and win.
No.
They score like 7 runs in the last two innings, and then the old guys are like, "Well, no, no, no," and my son's like, "Oh, thank God, Dad!" And I'm like,
We have
"I
a
should have
home.
put the money on them. I had no idea."
Yes. That is so
So
wild. That is
yeah,
so,
yeah. So I wouldn't like necessarily put money on this game. Well, maybe
yeah.
I'd put $5 on it, but I do think like from all the testimony, really, we're just seeing a lot of the Bills winning here.
Yeah.
And that's what you like to see when you look at these charts. Like, how
Absolutely.
many testimonies are there? Absolutely different. Did you by chance get to see Cesar Love's presentation that we did?
Yeah, I
Uh,
saw bits and pieces
yeah,
of it, but I didn't get to fully sink into it. As you know, I'm preparing for family to arrive, so it's
right. Yeah.
juggling job and juggling that. But I heard it was phenomenal, and what I saw was also phenomenal.
Yeah, it was interesting because his whole way of looking at a game is different.
Hmm.
Like he's not weighing out these different factors in the way that I think you and I weigh him out. Maybe
Okay.
he's coming from a less traditional background. He's
Yeah.
just looking at the symbology of the different planets and how they're interacting.
Okay.
But he did say that that the Blue Jays were going to win, and
Mm.
he so far of the games he called, he only missed one of them. And then the rest of the
Wow.
games he got. So it's really fantastic. It's just amazing how astrology can make these can give you insight into how a game works. And I think one of the things that I really appreciate listening to you talk about and how you approach the game and how he approaches the game, looking at the astrology of a game, is not getting too caught up in the calculations and symbology. And I felt like one of the things that happened with John Frawley's method, who wrote the book on sports astrology,
Yeah.
is it just got overly complicated in factors that are
Yes.
involved and how you calculate those factors. And sometimes it's just like that primary symbol speaks to you, and that's what the answer is. I find that a lot of times with horary charts. Usually that answer is just right there in the symbols immediately. And
Agreed.
that's what it looks like with this game. Like the symbols are immediately speaking there. Mars conjunct Mercury, Mercury conjunct Jupiter. To me, that's a lot of air yards. That's Josh
Yeah.
Allen throwing for a lot of yards. Take that over on Josh Allen, which shouldn't be too high because he's been averaging what something like he's been averaging 222 yards per game. So that's low yardage. I think he's
Yeah.
going to throw well this game.
Yeah.
I think that it's possible with the Uranus aspect that Mahomes, there's an interception or a fumble that affects how the Chiefs are performing because that Uranus is just really lined up on their sun. And so that's the back and the forth that can happen there.
Mhm.
So that's how I feel. Do you have any last thoughts or comments?
I agree with that. One of my favorite things in terms of how you navigate these charts is when you have those moments of and that's it. You've been right so far. So this would be 3 of 3, maybe 4 of 4 if this is also correct. You've done it in a couple of other games, and also just in terms of calls of like, oh, it's this. This is going to happen as soon as the game starts, and you were like right on the money. So I feel confident about the Bills where that is concerned. I agree with what you said about Mercury conjoining Jupiter. The only thing that I would like to touch on, which is beyond the scope of this, is it okay if we talk about the Browns game from 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks
Yes,
ago?
absolutely.
Very
Yeah, because
quickly,
we were both
very
off on that
quickly.
one,
We were
I
both
think.
off. We
Yeah.
were. So this was 2 weeks ago on the 12th. And this is where I am at with this game. The ascendant is ruled by the exalted Jupiter. It's in the seventh house Placidus, eighth house whole sign, right? So
Hmm.
here again, we're seeing Jupiter is not giving in the ways that we thought it would. And then the descendant is ruled by Mercury, which was applying to the conjunction with Mars. And when I was reading this chart, my thought was this can't be good with the Mercury applying to the conjunction with Mars. And I'm like, I
Hmm.
don't know about any of that. Doesn't seem right. And that was simply not the case. Whole sign house systems, this was in the 12th house, but Placidus, we have it in the 10th house. So there is an angular component if we're being a little bit loose with the definition and looking at the Placidus house system. Of course, it's angular here as well, but it is pushed into the eighth house. And I think the bottom line is Mars seems to be the recurrent anchor point in these election charts, these event charts for sports. And so I think in this regard, beyond the scope that the Steelers have been looking good, the Browns have been looking bad. I think this factor was one that I didn't really know how to read. And I just expected it to be bad because Mars can be bad. Do you have any thoughts?
Oh, well, that opens up a whole can of worms. Like the last game we were looking at, I was like, well, Mars is in a debilitated house
Yeah.
through accidental debilitation.
Mhm.
Mars in the 12th is also in a debilitated place.
Yes.
So then there's a whole question of like, well, maybe Placidus is better for game competition charts because here Mars is in the house of hope and joy. Or up there in the 10th house, actually. That's spectacular. The other thing there is I do believe, like Cesar Love was saying in his episode, that Venus rules baseball. And
Yes.
I believe that Mars rules football.
I
Like
agree.
if you're going to take it, football is a game of injuries every game,
Yes.
grinding, hard hitting. So there's just this intensity to it that is very Mars-like. Like no matter, like you're piercing the ball through the other line
Yeah.
every single game. It's got that piercing point. So then the condition of Mars becomes really interesting. And what happens here with the conjunction, looking back at the chart,
Yeah.
is that they strengthen each other. Like
Okay.
Mars, because Mars is in rulership,
Hmm.
it is actually strengthening that Mercury rather than hurting it.
Yes.
Now,
Yeah.
if Mars was in Cancer and Mercury was in Cancer, I think it could have a opposite indication.
Agreed.
And then Mercury being not combust, being direct in motion. And let's see, that's Mercury is rising after the sun. I'm gonna call Mercury a benefic in this
Okay.
position.
Okay.
It's not having any kind of its other accidental debilitations. And
Mhm.
the only debility it has is that it is conjunct a malefic,
Yeah.
Mars, but Mars is its ruler. So Mars is giving Mercury its best rather than its
Mhm.
worst.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of what, like, I didn't calculate in the excitement of it. Because, astrology, it's inception. It's like, okay,
Yes.
well, here's the first symbol, and then here's the second symbol, and here's how it just keeps dropping down. But a planet that's applying to a malefic, but under the rulership of the malefic, isn't harmed because that malefic is not doing um, it's treating, as the classical text would say, it's treating that Mercury as a guest
Gotcha.
rather than an enemy.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
That's very
Awesome.
astrological, technical for people listening
But that's
who are not
fun.
necessarily astrologers. Yeah, yeah,
That's
that's
so
fine. Well, it is astrology. It's an astrology channel. So, yes, that's fine. Thank you. So, in conclusion,
yeah.
we are going with the Buffalo Bills.
Yes. Both of us.
Yeah, both of us. And I am going with Josh Allen over the yards.
Okay.
And I am going to go with that there is an interception or a fumble, that there is a turnover. Would you pull up the game chart just
Yeah,
quickly? One
absolutely.
second.
Sharing the screen, going here, here, down one. Here we go.
Okay, there we go. So the ascendant next aspect is gonna, yeah, I would say like there's gonna be a turnover when the ascendant moves into, which is what, 2 hours, third quarter, that there will be a turnover in the third quarter when that ascendant conjuncts Uranus and opposes
Ah,
Mars Mercury. So if I would be like, oh yeah, that's going to be a quick change on the downs there. There might be a turnover in the third quarter based on that.
okay. Wonderful.
Weird little side prediction. Sorry.
No, that's
Yeah,
great. I love that. I
yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
any insight you have on the prop bets of it all.
Okay, yeah. Well, thank you very much, Jess. Thank you, everybody who's taken time out of your lives, which are probably extraordinarily busy, and listen to us ramble on about our favorite
Yes.
topics, football and astrology. Thank you very much. And I look forward to seeing you next week, Jess. And I look
Absolutely.
forward to seeing all of you next week. Thank you.
Bye.